Hello and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be introducing the SIBO spectrum. These are 4 categories or classifications of SIBO that have nothing to do with the type of gas being produced and nothing to do with the type of bacteria present. And I think that this actually has a lot to do with how you decide to treat your SIBO and what ultimately is going to work best for you. So stay tuned if you want to learn these 4 categories and how to ultimately treat your SIBO more effectively and be rid of it for good. Now, it's worth saying at this point of the video that this is a video that's probably going to make a lot of people angry. And frankly, I don't care. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to give you the truth and help you feel better. So if I have to ruffle some feathers in the process, I'm perfectly okay doing that. And I'm going to talk about how I drew these conclusions and how I came to this idea of the SIBO spectrum at the end of the video. But let's get into the 4 categories because I know that's actually why you're here. Now, starting on one far side of the continuum, we're going to color this one in red, and this could go by a couple of different names. I'm going to call this one True SIBO. This is the honest to goodness, badass True SIBO. These are the people who have genuine bona fide malabsorption. They have B12 deficiency and pernicious anemia. They have iron deficiency and anemia. And if you're thinking, ooh, I've got all those, I assure you this is most likely not you. These are the people with short bowel syndrome or surgically altered guts. And that has led to an astronomical overgrowth of bacteria in the small bowel. So we're talking something in the 10 to the 7th to 10 to the 9th range. And we're gonna come back to that idea in just a minute. These people have a hella overgrowth. And they also have something that's accompanied by what has been called SIBO Syndrome in at least one paper. I'll link the paper down below, but it was basically a paper that talked about the pros and cons and the drawbacks of breath testing. And they were talking about this exact phenomenon where they said, look, the people with this degree of overgrowth really did have anemia and malabsorption and leaky gut and villus atrophy. But the people who fall short of this range of bacterial overgrowth do not. So they labeled those other clinical conditions, the anemia, the malabsorption, the villus atrophy, they called that SIBO syndrome. So you could have overgrowth without that syndrome, or you could have both. These are the people who have both. And again, a lot of times these are going to be people with short bowel syndrome. This is the SIBO of yesteryear. This is the SIBO of the 1980s and 90s, where if you were diagnosed with SIBO, it was a big freaking deal, and you were very debilitated from the symptoms. So this is our first category. And again, I can already feel the blood boiling for some of you, but hang tight. I'm going to explain more as we go. So true SIBO or SIBO accompanied by SIBO syndrome is going to be up here in the red. Now there's going to be a zone in the orange that I'm going to draw here, and it's probably about yay big, I would say. And this is a category of what I'm willing to call SIBO without it being true, honest to goodness, holy crap SIBO. Right, so let's label this, let's just call this willing. I'm willing to call this SIBO too. This is probably that group of people who are a little bit shy of this number, but not quite down here either. So this would be something on an aspirate, for example, where maybe they're at the 10 to the 5th to maybe 10 to the 7th kind of range. Right, so they definitely have some overgrowth. It's not as much as the people over here. You could probably get this version of SIBO without something like short bowel syndrome or really invasive GI anatomy changes. This is going to be where a lot more of the people with SIBO these days are going to fall. So these are the folks who have had food poisoning and maybe they've taken PPIs for a long time. I have a FODMAP Freedom student right now who had been on PPIs for 30 years. Yeah, she could easily fall into this category of what I'm willing to call SIBO. But importantly, these people don't usually have SIBO syndrome. There are other reasons for their nutritional deficiencies, usually lack of intake. And they don't have the anatomical abnormalities that are going to be seen with something like short bowel syndrome. So this is SIBO, maybe not SIBO syndrome, but this is that middle zone where I'm willing to call that SIBO and kind of work with that. Now, we're going to get to there in a minute. Let me get my other colors. Whole rainbow today in my markers, people. And let's get into the category that will surely anger the most of you. And that is this big honkin' yellow zone. And this is where you tested positive. So we'll just say test plus sign. So these are the people who are told that they have SIBO. They tested positive. They had a lactulose breath test or a glucose breath test or whatever the case may be. They tested positive. They are told that they have SIBO, but they do not. This is very, very common. And if you don't believe me, go reference my videos from maybe a year and a half or so ago, where I talk about the high rate of false positives with lactulose breath testing and glucose breath testing. There's about an 88% false positive rate with lactulose, meaning the vast majority of people who test positive with lactulose actually do not have SIBO. And there's a still substantial false positive rate, about 50%, with glucose breath testing. So these are the people who, probably a lot of you are on my channel right now watching this video. These are folks who have been told that they have SIBO, but in fact they do not. And this is part of this continuum. Again, I know, come with me with your axes. And then finally, the last category, probably the most boring to a lot of you, is going to be the people who either have tested negative or they have not pursued testing. A lot of these people have been diagnosed with IBS, occasionally other conditions, but really it's going to be like the run-of-the-mill IBS sufferer. But here's the thing. From basically orange over, oftentimes people can have very similar symptoms on this spectrum, right? You get bloating and indigestion and post-meal fullness, maybe a loss of appetite because of that fullness. You could have diarrhea or constipation or mixed bowel patterns. You might have some of the same root causes like food poisoning or PPI use. It's just a continuum of less severe to more severe in a sense. And again, if you want to think of it in terms of the degree of overgrowth, we've got the wicked bad overgrowth over here. The medium, that's probably too much kind of overgrowth here. And then down here, we have lowered the bar so severely that we are now labeling people with SIBO when they get all the way down to 10 to the third CFU per whatever it is, which is insane. So remember, I always mess this up, and I'm just going to embrace it at this point, but you're going to get the gist of what you need from here. Remember, if you will, math, but 10 to the third is what? 10, and then you move the decimal point over. So 10 to the third, I think, maybe, mathematicians correct me if I'm wrong, is 10,000 CFU versus, let's just say 10 to the seventh, the bottom rung of this true SIBO world. 10 to the seventh, you're now moving the decimal point over 7 times. So now you slap on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look, I almost didn't have room. So we used to reserve the label of SIBO for the people who had 100 million or more CFU per milliliter of juices. Like this was the bottom rung of this diagnosis for a long time. And now over the years, we have gradually reduced so that now recent papers are going to label people as having SIBO when they're down at 10,000. You can't tell me that these are the same thing. You can't tell me that these people should expect to have malabsorption and villus atrophy and nutritional deficiencies because of their SIBO. It's preposterous to even compare the two, but I'm trying to do it here in this video anyway. So again, it's a continuum, it's a severity thing, not the severity of symptoms necessarily, aside from the SIBO syndrome and the malabsorption of the villus atrophy piece, but these people can still be quite bloated, quite debilitated, and quite miserable because of their symptoms. But again, comparing apples to oranges here is not serving any of you. And when you're out here in the wild west of the internet, where everybody has an opinion and everybody's more than happy to share it with you, and you are reading things about SIBO causing villus atrophy and malabsorption, and it's freaking you out, and you're going in nuking everything with an atomic bomb, antibiotic after antibiotic, and you don't realize that you're actually over here in one of these two categories, it's not serving anybody. And then we wonder why SIBO is quote unquote hard to treat. It's not hard to treat if you understand where you fall in this spectrum, to be quite frank. Now, on that related note, by the way, let's draw another piece of information here. I personally think that the use of antimicrobials, whether they be prescription or natural, is going to fall probably somewhere here. Right, and I'll just label it ABX for short. So this is probably the group of people who would most benefit from something like antibiotics, rifaximin, FC-cidal, dysbiocide, whatever, pick your flavor of the day. When you start getting into the bottom half of this orange range, and certainly by the time you get into this yellow range, these are also the people who get limited or no relief from, like long-term relief from antimicrobials. I mean, these people might feel temporarily good obliterating everything with rifaximin. I'm not denying that, but keep in mind rifaximin is also anti-inflammatory and heals leaky gut and does other stuff too. So if you had any degree of positive response with rifaximin or antimicrobials, I don't want you to erroneously put yourself in a higher category. But I think where it's appropriate and necessary to actually go in and kill the bad stuff and make room for the good stuff, I would peg it somewhere in this range, 10 to the 6th to 10 to the 9th. But here's the thing. Hardly any of you have had scopes and biopsies and aspirates. So you probably don't know this number, nor should you pursue that. And again, breath testing is pretty worthless. So the question now becomes, what the heck do you do? And this is the art behind the science, right? So I just gave you the science, the knowledge. Now we have to figure out what the heck to do in your actual life. Now, try to pin yourself on the spectrum and understand where you are might be beneficial, it might not. I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it. I wouldn't agonize over it. But if you want to loosely kind of hold this idea in your head, feel free. Probably the best thing I could do is give you a couple of examples of people who I really thought were in the orange zone, as opposed to the majority of people I work with who are in the yellow or the green zone. Now, in the orange zone, I can think of two people right off the top of my head. So, for example, I worked with a guy who had a partial small bowel resection due to a blockage in his 20s. And he had gotten diagnosed with SIBO, and he had done some rounds of rifaximin and antimicrobials, and they really, really helped him, but it kept cropping back. And I remember talking to him the first time we met, and I remember saying, honestly, a lot of people that I work with have been told that they have SIBO, but I think probably do not have it. You are one of the more rare people who probably does have SIBO, and doing some antimicrobials or being mindful of quote unquote feeding the SIBO might be beneficial for you going forward. Now, I will tell you, this individual has still benefited highly from doing the unsexy basic stuff that I talk about in damn near every video. So we got him on an adaptogen, and that really, really helped him. He's figuring out that stress is very linked to when he has flares. So it's not to say that this group of people doesn't need to do the unsexy basics. They totally do. But this is a person where I'm going into it thinking we actually might need some antimicrobials, and we might need to think about the overgrowth idea a little bit more than the run-of-the-mill SIBO person. Another case, I remember I worked with a woman, and she came in, and when I say that she had every single root cause of SIBO, it is no exaggeration. She had been on PPIs, she had been on H2 blockers, she was hypothyroid, she had multiple autoimmune diseases, she was a celiac so severe, if she got even a trace amount of gluten cross-contaminated from a restaurant, she went to the ER without fail. So she didn't eat out, she had to stay at home. Very severe stress going on, like losing a home and getting foreclosed on, that level of chronic and stress in her history. She had had food poisoning very severely several times. Everything, I think she had taken opioids at some point. Every single root cause that I screened for in my paperwork, she checked off hell yeah to every single one of them. And her symptoms were very severe, very debilitating, to a point where, this might surprise people, I recommended the low FODMAP diet to her because she was in such a pickle that she just needed some relief. And I counseled her on, hey, this is a Band-Aid that could really help you. We're going to try to get you off of it, and we're going to work on motility and other things, but here's a Band-Aid for the time being. She responded beautifully well to low FODMAP. We did a little bit of antimicrobials, and she did really well with that. But again, this is not the person oftentimes who has one single root cause of SIBO. This is going to be the person who checks off all the boxes, every single symptom very severely, every single root cause very severely and profoundly. And that, again, I really think that she was in this category of oh no, you probably do have overgrowth, for real, for real. And she was in such a severe pickle that I told her, I'm not going to test you for this because I actually think the test is going to dump you over the edge and make you feel really, really sick. And this was at a time in my life where I was actually using SIBO breath testing. I refused to test her because I thought it would be so hard on her body to do the test that it wasn't worth doing. So now again, same thing, this woman really benefited from the unsexy basics. She did really well with antimicrobials, yes, but she also did phenomenally well with prokinetics and dialing in some stuff on her nutrition and stress management. So again, it's not to say that these people wouldn't benefit from that work. It's just that you might add in antimicrobials and do that a little bit more heavily versus the people in the yellow zone. But here's the thing, let's zoom out. Let's just zoom out on this whole thing and talk about this more broadly so that the rest of you can benefit from this conversation. So again, we've got the antibiotic zone. But if you look at this whole stinking thing, I really think that all of these, whether it's IBS, quote unquote, IBS, told that I had SIBO, but probably not, told I have SIBO, and yeah, that probably is true, or holy shit, you have short bowel syndrome, you're probably not even watching my YouTube videos, to be frank, right? No matter where you are on this continuum, I think it boils down to three main things: dysmotility, dysbiosis, and a lack of resiliency. So going back to define those in case you're new. Dysmotility is poor motility. So trying to sweep the bacteria and sweep the debris out of your small intestines down to the colon where it belongs so that it doesn't fester and overgrow in the small bowel, that movement and that motility tends to be impaired in people with IBS and SIBO both. And that's what leads to the overgrowth and the stagnation and the fullness and the indigestion. So working on motility and working on the vagus nerve is critically, critically important for this group of people, or you, I should say. There also tends to be a very strong dysbiosis component to this. Now, is it dysbiosis in the small bowel that is also associated with overgrowth? That's up for grabs, and we can't really test that easily. But knowing going into this that probably everybody on the spectrum has an insufficiency of good bacteria or an abundance of bad guys or both, and the system is imbalanced, that is useful to know. Because yeah, we could do antimicrobials to try to nuke the bad guys, and that's what all of you have done, but not enough people are talking about bringing those good guys back from the dead or close to the brink of death. So a lot of the dysbiosis focus needs to be on nourishing and replenishing and repleting those good microbes. And then the third, of course, is lack of resiliency. This goes back to my cliff metaphor that I've shared in my root cause videos. But basically, it goes back to those unsexy basics. Do you have unsexy nutrition dialed in? Are you getting enough calories? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough fiber? Are you getting vitamins and minerals? How's your sleep? Does your sleep suck or is it pretty good? How's your stress management? Is it pretty good or does it need some work? Are you moving your body? Do you have a good relationship with food? Do you have good relationships with other people in your life? These are the things that nobody wants to tackle because it doesn't feel special enough to cure SIBO, but I assure you that it will. And these are the three tenets of this entire spectrum, no matter where you are on it. So no matter where you think you are on the spectrum, go forth, treat motility, treat dysbiosis, and nurture your good guys finally, and work on those unsexy basics and really take care of you and your own resiliency. And I think that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you're going to be feeling a heck of a lot better before you know it. Of course, the challenge sometimes is figuring out how to apply this in your actual life, right? Like there's a science and an art to this type of work. So I'm sharing the science, and I'd like to think I do a good job of that on YouTube. But even though I'm quite literally telling you what to work on, right? Dysmotility, dysbiosis, unsexy basics, the application can still be tricky in real life humans. So as an example, let's say there's somebody who just learned that they might be in this yellow zone, but they've been chasing the thing SIBO for so long, and they've been so focused on killing and starving, killing and starving, killing and starving, that anything else at this point almost like doesn't make sense or is really terrifying. So even though I'm telling you to feed your good bacteria, the idea of feeding any bacteria to somebody who's been stuck here for a long time could be really genuinely terrifying and confusing and frustrating and maybe you feed them a little bit and then you get gas and then you panic and then you pull back, and like, it's very easy to get stuck in real life, even when you have somebody on YouTube telling you what to do. So if you're feeling frustrated or stuck or confused, or like you need more guidance to get through what you need to get through, check out FODMAP Freedom. I'm going to put the link down in the description, but basically FODMAP Freedom in 90 days is my group coaching program. So there's some education component to it, where each week I release a set of videos which you watch on your own time at your own pace, but then there's a lot of support. So we have a support email address that you can email at any time, and we'll get back to you usually within a day with answers to whatever your questions might be. And there are 4 to 6 live Q&As every single week, most of which span multiple hours, that you can hop on and hop off and get answers to your questions. And right now we're coming out of the digestive juices kind of section of the program with this group. So we're learning about HCl and bile and enzymes and digestive juices. And the kids have had some really good questions, right? Like, is it appropriate for me to do the betaine HCl challenge? For some of them, the answer is no. For most of them, the answer was yes. Should I do the bile challenge? And how do you do that? Do I even need to consider a digestive enzyme, or should I not even bother? Most of them, I said, no, don't even bother, but there's a few that might want to consider it. I tried the betaine HCl challenge, and in the first day or two, this happened. Is this okay? Or should I pull back and not do it anymore? There's some really good questions that come up in the journey. And if you're just watching YouTube videos, no matter how good I try to make the YouTube videos, sometimes you can get a bit stuck. So if you're feeling stuck and you would like to be unstuck, go ahead and check out FODMAP Freedom down below. We're going to be enrolling a new group of students in April, and I would love to help you no matter where you are on the SIBO spectrum. And I really, really think there's a good chance that this could be the year that you say sayonara to SIBO for good. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, click the like button, and leave a comment down below with the videos that you would like to see me do next. Doing all of those really helps support the channel and support my efforts in making as many videos as possible for you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.